Buff Dragon is really good again. It has risen to the top of tier 1 once more, and it's time to try it out for myself. You know, as a tier 1 deck, it's also really cheap. This version only runs 5 legendaries, 3 copies of Coach Joe, and 2 copies of Alice. And some versions don't even run the Alice either. They just run the Joe. You could also run something like this that runs the Draziel instead. But either way, the game plan is the same. You buff your whole deck up a lot with cards like Militant Mermaid. And buff in this context means to add defense to the followers in your deck, and then your followers, when they reach a certain threshold of increased defense, they activate effects like Dion, who ramps you at 3 defense and recovers an Evo point at 7. Ramping being nice because then you can play Joe, the strongest card in the deck, which deals 5 on fanfare if you have 20 defense on board, and if this card itself has 11 defense on evolve, it deals another 7. 1 card for 12 damage, and you always have the evolve point because of Dion. Speaking of evolving, you evolve a lot because Dragonborn Striker at 5 defense evolves. Grand Slam Tamer evolves at 7 defense while summoning a 4/3 with Storm. And Coral Spirit evolves while keeping you alive as a gigantic ward body that can't be targeted. And since you evolve so much, Alice now becomes an option, being able to draw you cards or in the late game even have supplemental Storm damage alongside your Joe. The 2 new cards that are in this deck are really strong. First of all, Heaven Scale Dragon is why this deck is so good in tier 1 at the moment, because against Helio Shadow, another one of those tier 1 threats, you can get rid of their Adjudicator and their whole board entirely. Finally, Lucky Mermaid, another new card. Great card because it buffs twice, once on fanfare and once on evolve, but crucially on evolve it also buffs your hand by +2 defense, meaning if you draw these cards early without the chance to buff them, you still have a chance to activate their effects by evolving Lucky Mermaid, which adds a lot more consistency to the deck. Alright, let's get into the game. So first make sure to like the video and subscribe. It really does help out. First up, we're up against Runecraft here. Gonna go ahead and keep Dragon Oracle in hand. Some buff builds, again, don't run Dragon Oracle and focus solely on just a lot more followers, like Gunbane and such, but personally, I do like the option of still ramping on 2. It's good. So let's jump into this. We're actually fighting Mysteria in this case, which is kind of rare. Ever since the nerf to Mysteria, it's really been not a super common deck on ladder. That being said, it's still around. I keep getting texts. Apologies for that. Okay. Go ahead and silence that right now. But yeah, Mysteria has been way less prominent since the nerf, but yeah, it is still around occasionally, and it honestly still does occasionally top events still, although much less common than it used to be. Now we do ramp with Dragon Oracle, meaning now on turn 3 we have access to 4 play points. Go ahead and use the Joe because it's not active yet. Want to get rid of that and start buffing it up. So worm crafting helps with that as well. And now we have the Dion for even a more additional ramp, which is fantastic. Dion helps to ramp and buff the deck, and then I can also play Asuka Shiori alongside it, recover that play point back, and maybe even get another 2 play points to play like a mermaid or something, right? So let's go ahead and see what we draw. Another Asuka Shiori, that's fine. Dion comes out, and then we can play Asuka Shiori here, recover some health, recover the play points, and I can even evolve it and play Blooming Dancer alongside it. I almost said Glooming Dancer. No, she's very happy. She's not a doomer or a gloomer. She's a bloomer, baby. And you know, I had the option of playing Oracle there, but I thought this board was a bit scary enough for me to justify going for the trading plan instead. And also, I can save Oracle for overflow for a potential draw. They played Dual Barrier, which honestly is not a great card. Especially in this meta, I feel like when, you know, having a wide board is actually kind of bad for you if your opponent has Helio or if your opponent has, you know, Heaven Scale Dragon, which I might just do in my hand. But instead, I'm using the opportunity to turbo my evolves in this case because this board is actually not that threatening yet. Here I'm a little sad because the Joe I draw is at 8 defense, so it doesn't have like the full-on activation just yet. Joe has to have at least 9 defense on base form to deal the 7 damage to face on evolve, as you know. So that's kind of a bummer, but whatever. At least we boost our evolve count a little bit here. Our Coral Spirits are now evolving for free. Any future Alices are going to be really powerful as well. Grim Black Worm. Multiples of them are coming out. At least they don't have Ginger yet, which is something that I'm thankful for. I actually am going down to a pretty low defense total right now, so at this point I'm sweating. I'm like, wait, is Mysteria actually real again? And you know, I actually talked about this on my Shadowverse podcast Evolve Point with Kaylin, and Kaylin was telling me that Mysteria is actually not that bad, and I was like, nah, dude, you're capping. But at this point, I was like, maybe he wasn't capping. Maybe he was right. So I, with the fear of God in my heart, I just go ahead and heal as much as possible and try not to die. Then they play the Hannah, and I'm like, oh, I'm gonna die. But again, at this point, they haven't played Ginger yet, so I'm still like, maybe I'm fine. Maybe I'm fine. It's a lot of damage, though. But I go down all the way to 7 from 18. So if I didn't heal all that defense on the previous turn, I actually would have been screwed. I go ahead and play Asuka Shuri to heal even more. Joe comes out, but unfortunately he doesn't have the full effect. So I do just play Dragonborn Striker instead and try and get that damage in, and that's lethal. All right, now we're in the Dragoncraft mirror match here. I'm fully expecting this to be buff dragon. And we keep Joe for just a bit of draw because we do have a 1-drop and a 2-drop buff now, which I'm happy about. Go ahead and play that Militant Mermaid right away. And getting Oracle in hand is nice too, meaning that I can ramp to 4 play points on turn 4. Then I can play Megalorca Rider plus Joe, maybe plus another 1-drop on the next turn. And we do actually get that with Militant Mermaid. I think I do actually make a lot of scuffed plays here, now that I think about it, if I'm remembering correctly. Or is that a different game? I remember there was a game that I played with this deck where I used Joe without full effect and didn't get the draw of it because I had Heaven Scale Dragon already in hand. So I was like, it's fine. That might have been a different game, but that I was not happy about that situation. So if it's not this game, I'll be happy about that. Anyway, back to the actual game at hand. They played Megalorca Rider. So yeah, it is a true mirror here. I just go ahead and slam the Heaven Scale right now because I need more draw. And I was really hoping to get Lucky Mermaid to activate my Striker and my Joe. And we got her. It's a good card. Now my Joe and my Striker can be full effect when I play them. And we also want to get the Striker active because that'll make it easier to accelerate my Alice, which I really need to be able to deal with the board. They're also playing the Evolve variant, but they're leaning a lot heavier into the Evolve archetype than I am with a Kyrie. I don't run Kyrie, I just run Alice and 2 Bloomings for the Evolve package because I feel like sometimes the Evolve package can end up harming you because they don't get buffed, you know? So you have to be wary about how much you're actually using in terms of neutrals. You're trying to buff your dragon cards. If your hand is full of neutrals, then you just have a bunch of mid cards, you know what I mean? But yes, we end up drawing a lot here, buffing up our Joes, buffing up our Strikers. And because I'm only 1 Evolve in, I sent the Alice back. That's totally fine. I drew the Grand Slam Tamer in the end, though, so at this point I'm like, maybe I shouldn't have sent the Alice back. But that's okay. The rest of our cards are still really good. And they go double Dion, letting them ramp all the way to 9 play points next turn, and that's kind of tough for me. That's okay, though. Don't worry about it. And at this point, they're just trying to reduce my defense total as much as possible so that I can't Joe. Fair enough. I actually probably could have Joed there if I just Dragonborn Strikered and Coach Joed himself. But I wanted to get my Evolve count up for Coral Spirit in case they went for a Draziel the next turn. Because I'm not sure what variant of deck they're running, right? So that's something that I was keeping into consideration. But now that I think about it, was that lethal with Joe? 1, 2, down to 15, down to 12. That was actually lethal. So yes, that was a missed lethal. Whoops. Ew, boy. Well, you can tell that I don't really use buff on my day-to-day climbing, can you? Usually I, in terms of actually climbing, I usually just use Golem Boost if I am in the mood to climb. So, yeah. My bad. Apologies for that. But it doesn't matter, okay? It wasn't Miss Lethal. It wasn't Miss Lethal. It was simply extended BM because we end up getting the dub next turn anyway with a Spirit plus Joe to finish the job. So, you know, don't even worry about it. And wrapping up with another Dragoncraft mirror, and I'm certain this is buff again. They're trying to debate me because they got Draconier sleeves and they got Lumior leader. It's like, is it discard? Is it freaking armed? No, alright? It's buff. I know it's buff, okay? So anyway, they played Draziel turn 1, which should have been a clue for me, I think. because if I remember correctly, their list is actually quite an interesting list that uses the Dragon Queen's Castle as well. This is not the first time I've seen this Dragon Queen's Castle list on ladder. I am not sure where it came from, but it seems to be gaining popularity with people, at least people who want to try it out on ranked. It's a little strange, but you know, I'm kind of down with it. All right, let's double buff our deck with Wormcrafting and Wormcrafting again, because our hand is kind of cheeks. We didn't get a one cost a ramp there. A buff on one, which made it a little awkward for us. The only saving grace really is that we got Oracle allowing us to ramp into this play. But their board is looking kind of big. Thank God, though, I draw the Dion, which means now I can summon the Hellflame Dragon and the Dion, and I can full trade here while ramping as well, which is like a huge, huge benefit. Like, that top deck really, really saved me in this case here. Being able to full clear, have a board, and ramp while buffing as well. At this point, I'm looking for, obviously, Lucky Mermaid to get my Heaven Scale Dragon up and my Dragonborn Striker, because right now they're inactive, and they play their own Heaven Scale, clearing my board, which makes me sad because I worked hard for that board. Anyway, Militant Mermaid, go ahead and come up, and unfortunately, they didn't evolve that turn, so my Asuka Shiri isn't active yet, but I did get a Lucky Mermaid off of this, meaning now that my Dragonborn Striker and my Heaven Scale Dragon, the first one, is now active, and I'm able to clear this with the Dragonborn Striker. Now, with 2 Heaven Scales, I'm not worried about their Draz because I can get rid of any of their boards. What I'm worried about is their burst damage at this point, because I feel like they're ahead of me on play points, and they're probably ahead of me on buffs as well. So I'm just like, how do I stop myself from dying to their full burst, right? Alice comes out simply to draw me cards, because I need more cards. Blooming Dancer as well. And at this point, I'm pretty sure I just play Militant plus Coral Spirit, because I don't actually have the capacity to clear with just Alice and Blooming. I actually have to use my hard removal here. And it evolves as well, which is nice. Now I have 2 Heaven Scales for draw, so I'm not super worried about my lack of hand size at this point. Again, my entire thought process here is just like, how much burst do they have? Should I be worried about that? Heaven Scale reduces my board down by a lot. And now it's really become the battle of Heaven Scales. Like, Heaven Scale has become like a super, super key card in this deck. At first, it was like a weird inclusion. Like, you can see my video from a while back. I think it was like a week or so back, where I played Buff Dragon around expansion launch time, or close to it anyway. And Heaven Scale was like not a common inclusion at all. But with the rise of Helio being a huge threat, and also like other gigantic board-based threats like you know, Big Dragon as well as Buff Dragon itself, Heaven Scale has really become an MVP. And here's their Draziel. It's just the battle of debuffs now. And it's really quite annoying, but that's fine. I think I actually try to preserve my 0-8 here because it is just stats for a future Joe potentially. But other than that, yeah, we're just going to go ahead and Heaven Scale off the top to straight up remove this Draziel. No worries. This Alice should be able to go face. And I'm digging for Joe, man. Joe bottom 15 is kind of a harsh scene, but it's got to be in there somewhere, right? So let's go ahead and play Mermaid, and there he is. Bottom 13 Joe, but we take those. Now, this is what I was talking about. This build, I don't know what it is, but this is not the first time I'm seeing the Dragon Queen's Castle build. It's like maybe the second or third time in the past 2 days. Someone has done something to make this more popular. And he actually does board lock me here, which means that I can't secure lethal, which is annoying. And I'm worried here that he's just going to Draziel restore his health back to 11. But I know that if he does restore his health back to 11, I can just Dion and Joe anyway. So it would be lethal either way, because Dion plus Joe is 12 damage. And they weren't able to do that. They instead just got a second castle. And this does not clear anything. I don't know about this castle build, guys, but there's more than one. There's quite a few people running it, so it's a bit strange. But we got there. Even though Joe is bottom 13, we were still okay.